This is Michael Clara. Welcome to another edition of my blog. This is the title, The Mastermind, and it's part of the series of the Cannibalization of Public Education. And what I'll highlight here is I'm going to talk about the Mastermind through recent GRAMA requests. I received over 1,000 pages of emails and was able to put together kind of surmise who the mastermind was behind a lot of the friction that I've experienced over the last 2 years of service on the Salt Lake City School Board. And the wizard behind the curtain is none other than Jason Olson, who is his title is Communications Officer for the Salt Lake City School District. In our last school board meeting on November 2nd, 2014, board member Doug Nelson passed out a letter to the board explaining to us the amount of money that the district has spent in responding to GRAMA requests. And these are GRAMA requests that I've submitted to the school district. And as you see here, he's saying, or the district has determined that it's $75,000, close to that they spent in the last 2 years responding to my GRAMA requests or other complaints. And as I pointed out in a previous podcast on this particular title of the Cannibalization of Public Education, they wouldn't have to spend that kind of money if they would just respond to my questions. For those of you that are not from the state of Utah, a GRAMA request is the Government Records Access and Management Act, and it's the state version of a Freedom of Information Act that the federal government has. And as an elected member of the board, I don't get my questions answered, and so I've had to resort to submitting GRAMA requests to the district. I was recently notified by several of my friends that are elected officials, this was back in September, that they had received GRAMA requests, or their like if they were on the city council or in the legislature, or the Attorney General's office was another example, and they received a GRAMA request, a Government Records Access Management Act request from the Salt Lake City School District. So this is a letter that I wrote to the superintendent on September, and I submitted a GRAMA request asking him why was he monitoring elected officials. That according to state law, it was my job to evaluate and monitor his performance, not the other way around. And this is just the state law that shows that in our board policy, our handbook, that as a one member, there's 7 of us on the Salt Lake City School Board, we hire the superintendent, and then we are charged with evaluating his performance. So it's just odd that he has taken it upon himself to send out GRAMA requests. And his attorney, this is Christina Kendall, a few months ago, he hired his own attorney with taxpayer dollars. And so this is what she does, I guess, all day. So they sent out 15 of these GRAMA requests to various agencies. This one went to the House of Representatives. This is Greg Hughes. He's now the Speaker of the House here in the state of Utah. But as you see here, they want any information that the House of Representatives has that has to do with me. And then they, like I said, they did this to 15 different agencies, and that they would pay up to $100 for each one to get this information. Interestingly enough, in the last meeting of December 2nd, they pass out this letter explaining how much I've cost them, but here they are spending money monitoring my activities, which I've pointed out that by state law, it should actually be the other way around, that I monitor and evaluate the performance of the superintendent and how that's affecting the educational outcomes of students. But in this case, which is why this is titled The Cannibalization of Public Education, is that when the bureaucracy is so worried about me as an elected official, they're not managing the school and looking out for the education of our children. This is in this GRAMA request that I did. This is an email that Mikkel Withers sent to the board president, and he says that I want to their GRAMA request. And so then she responds that that's hilarious. So this is the GRAMA request. Again, they sent 15 of these out to various public agencies or elected officials. And when I found out about that, I did a GRAMA request. And then in this email, she says it's hilarious. And that's her response in private. But in this meeting here on December 2nd, she seemed indignant about it. But so, we got this schizophrenic thing going on where privately it's hilarious, but publicly it's just terrible. I'm submitting GRAMA requests. In this GRAMA request that I submitted, I found out that got this email exchange here between Mikkel and Michael Williams. Michael Williams is the Chief Executive Officer for the District in Development and External Relations. It's a big title for somebody in a school district, which he is the boss of Jason Olson, who is a mastermind. And here you see an email that he sends to Mikkel back in March of 2013 telling him that I'm serving on the High Council in the LDS Church and my stake. And then Mikkel replies, "Thanks, Mike. It was my understanding that he was on the High Council somewhere. Sounds like we know where now." It's beyond me why these two, have time to worry about what my contribution is in my church and where I serve in the church. This Mike Williams is even talking about seniority and where I sit on the High Council. So just very bizarre that these guys have that kind of time to be monitoring my activities. Back in January of 2013, almost 2 years ago, the Salt Lake Tribune wrote an article called "Salt Lake City Board Members Want More Flexibility." And then what happened as a result of that, and this is the two members that are quoted there, is Rosemary Emery, and that's me. In this, there was an email that I received as a result of this last GRAMA request, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to go spend some time on a different subject here. But this is one email. I'm just going to go through these kind of fast. But Jason spends an inordinate amount of time based on these emails, behind me in trying to respond to everything I say on my blog or if I'm quoted in the paper. And instead of having a discussion as board members, he ends up reducing everything to talking points and then getting this to the other board members. And then they kind of use these points as arguments as opposed to having deliberations. This is just one, March 26th. These are in order, and these are highlights. There's like an inordinate amount of email exchanges going on where he's constantly talking about me and how to counter anything that I say, or how to stop me from talking about anything that has to do with ethnic minority students. And then this is just another one where, he says he's attached a few points that went through his mind last night. And then he goes through here, and you can pause this video and read these if you want. But this is just the kind of stuff that my point is, it's a cannibalization of public education, because here you have a full-time communications officer, full-time attorney, full-time superintendent, that this is the kind of stuff they occupy their minds with, is how to defeat the elected official that's representing ethnic minority students. And my purpose is trying to improve the outcomes of these ethnic minority students. These guys' purpose is just to constantly, counter anything that I say, or, try to ignore it or to make sure it doesn't come up. This is another one from August of 2013. He goes through and he went back for that year or up until that point, and he reviewed all the media information that's come out about the district and goes through and counts how many times they focused on me. And that's truly what the heart of this is for these guys. Everything is a public relations counteroffensive. It has nothing to do with educating children and students. It has to do with their reputations and what they feel the reputation of the school district is. So because of that, you can't talk about anything, that has to do with student outcomes. And then, here's an email where he's sending out, and they end up sending these to other board members, that we categorically reject allegations, Clara. And then he says, not even calling him Mr. Clara, it's not deserved. So Jason is saying that, in January of this year that, we're not going to call me Mr. Clara anymore because that's not deserved. This one right here is, in March of this year, where he commends him for not getting into a public argument with me. And then he goes through and he's going to list here. He lists here the things that they should do to counter anything that I do. And so here's kind of the blueprint, if you will, of what he's saying that other board members should be doing to counter anything that I'm saying. And then as you see, he says here, board leadership or other board members do something in a public manner to reprimand board members or reprimand Mr. Clara. So you see the problem here is, as I try to address the issues for my community, which is, again, we have elementary schools in my neighborhood are 80 to 90% ethnic minority students. And as I try to address that, this is the countering of it, that they're just constantly blocking that path. So my message to the legislature is, you can put as much money as you want into trying to improve the educational outcomes of ethnic minority students. It's never going to happen when you have people like this running the school district, and this is all the kind of stuff they're worried about. So the letter of reprimand, and a number of these things the school board president actually did and implemented with the superintendent's help. So this is my letter of reprimand that I got of all days on April 1st of this year. And you see that they're saying that at the last meeting, because I brought up the fact that money was being paid to one of McHale's former associates for work that he didn't do. And even in this GRAMA request, I find out that this Charlie Hausman even made the contract to be an evaluator for grants here in the district, and then he doesn't do the evaluations. And yeah, I question that. And so then they turn it into offensive and defamatory comments. They weren't comments. They were, as a board member and a policymaker, I was asking, and I gave her a letter in this meeting asking the board president that we look into this financial impropriety, and she refused to do that. And instead, they follow the Mastermind's blueprint and come in, attack me in this particular meeting. I'm not going to show the video of this here, but suffice it to say, I hope that they have learned that I'm immune to marginalization, to their shaming tactics, to their trying to isolate me, and because I don't need their validation. I was elected by my neighbors to represent their interests and to try to improve the educational outcomes of my neighborhood. For the students that live here, I didn't go up to the school board or the school district to get validation. And so they try to use this manipulation that I'm not going to be their friend and they're going to embarrass me and they're going to shame me to try to get me to change, to not bring things up. But you know what? My neighbors know me. I've lived here almost 20 years. They know what they got when they elected me. And in fact, Rosemary, who is one of my allies, my only ally, I should say, on the board, was just reelected with almost a 75% reelection. And so clearly I believe that people in our communities are interested in improving the educational outcomes of our children in spite of what the bureaucracy is doing. this is an interesting, one of the things that he also recommended is that letters of support from board and superintendent and board administrators be done, and they actually did that. It was one of the most bizarre school board meetings it is the most bizarre school board meeting that I've attended, and I got a call earlier in the day from a couple of principals saying that they were told and ordered to be there. And in fact, it was the associate superintendent, Patrick Garcia, that made the phone calls telling them they had to be at this meeting tonight to support the superintendent. And remember, this is what the Mastermind Jason told them to do. So their tactic is, this public relations thing is to try to embarrass me, and then at the same time, have people there speaking on behalf of the superintendent. These are employees of the district. What else are they going to do?
Shelley Halverson.
So this is a public portion of the meeting, and I think it's worth listening to this praise session.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Shelley Halverson, and I'm the principal at Highland Park Elementary. I'm also the president of SLASA, or the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators. Before I read our message to you tonight, I wanted to recognize that the SLASA board and many of my fellow colleagues and administrators are in the audience tonight in support of our message. Dear board members, the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators would like to submit to you this letter of our support for Dr. Mikkel Withers, Superintendent, and Janet Roberts, Business Administrator. Their work in supporting student achievement for all students in our district has been instrumental for each of us in our current positions in schools and at the district office. Dr. Withers' commitment to students and their success is evident through his leadership. He advocates for them in every forum he has the opportunity to be in, with the State Office of Education, at the legislature, or with community partners. During administrative meetings, he always links the topics and questions at hand back to students, keeping students at the center of our...
So anyways, I'm pausing that because it just goes on like that. It's a bit ridiculous. This lady that's talking is a employee of the superintendent. That's her boss. So when your boss calls you and says, hey, show up at this public meeting and sing my praises, what is she going to do? And so a lot of these other people in the audience were principals also that were, again, ordered to be there. And so it's just the most insane thing. And then these people will turn around and accuse me of not having students in mind or at the center of my concerns, but they'll think nothing to hijack a school board meeting in order to fulfill what the mastermind is telling them to do in terms of getting this kind of stuff taken care of and supporting the superintendent. So that's the end of this blog entry, and I'll continue to do other sections of this to kind of demonstrate how the public school system is just imploding on itself because of the bureaucracy and their ignorance and their inability to really put the focus where it belongs.